we'll get the countdown. It'll be 3, 2, 1, go. So this is easy New Game Plus on any percent on console, and it's a very optimized run, we'll say. So at the beginning of the game, we're getting some story, a little background on what's going on from Mia here. Mia is one of the main characters of the game. We play as her later on, but we're finding out that she is married to Ethan. Sorry, I just realized on my end I couldn't hear anything, so I had to mess with my mixer. We run in the Japanese language on this game because the Japanese language actually will save some time. There's a moment later on where we can see during a conversation that there's a timer going on, and we can just actually see that time saved. In addition to that, we do run on the Japanese Sero D censored version of the game, and the reason for that is a lot of censorship in different animations throughout the game. Normally there's a lot of things that get cut off of people, and that's not going to happen today. So some of those don't save any time, but many of them that actually change in-game animations will create that time save for us. So when we get to those, I'll try to explain those to you. In this opening scene, we have, you know, a good amount of time before we get control of Ethan, but it's our favorite part of the game when we're running. Those times where you're just unable to take control and make it go faster. There's one skippable cutscene throughout the whole game, and even though we can skip it, it still has a nice long load screen with us. So we'll get to that later on, though. Alright, so as we're pulling up to the house, this is one of those scenes where Resident Evil 7 kind of harkens back to some of those old horror flicks. The driving up scene is a little bit of the Evil Dead, if you've ever seen those movies. Right here we're going to go ahead and take control of Ethan. So in this opening area, you'll kind of get to see some of how the movement is important for this run. You want to stay tight up against any of the walls that you're going to be making a turn into, and all of your turning needs to be really tight and right up against the corners. The other major component, especially for people that are starting to run the game, that they usually will help get them get their time cut pretty well, is learning the menuing of the game, because those two individual things combined will save a significant chunk of time. Thank you to all of the Res 7 guys showing up in the Game Over Cancer chat. Appreciate the support. So as we approach the guest house here, we're actually going to end up doing our first trick of the game, and it's pretty simple. Resident Evil 7 is verified with the in-game timer, so when we get here, we're going to pause and hit retry. Up in the top left-hand corner, you'll see that autosave icon, and as soon as that pops up, we can hit this retry. The reason for it is that once the game reloads, we're actually the game's going to forget that we're supposed to be moving slower, so we have increased movement speed. It doesn't look like we're moving a lot faster because we're moving at the same speed we were outside, but normally when you get into the house, you slow down a bit. There's 3 times that we use these retries on console. That's different from PC, and the reason why PC is able to use additional retries is that on console, the in-game timer starts back up a little bit before you're able to exit the load screen. So on some of the PC retries where the time saves are only like a second, it doesn't really make sense for us to try to do that, because we're more likely to lose 2 or 3 seconds on those extra ones. So PC's got about 9 or 10 depending on who the runner is. Some of those are just for like better spacing, like when you drop into some areas it'll put you in the standing position, but we don't use those. All the ones that we use on console are strictly for faster movement speed. So just up ahead we're going to hit our second trick. As you'll notice, I'm already hugging this wall to the right. As we come underneath it here, I'm going to stare at this wall, I'm going to move closer to it, and then carry forward. And the reason for that is those bubbles that you're going to hear right there. Normally there's a dead body that pops up out of the water, and it causes you to get knocked back for a few seconds. Like you fall into the water, and it takes a few moments to get back up. So by doing that, we actually keep that body from spawning. Now, this part of the game, we're finding Mia. This is, as I mentioned before, this is our wife. She's been missing for 3 years, and Ethan is obviously incredibly ecstatic that he just found her. Booty grab? That's the best question. I mean, we could, but no, we're not going to do that. So during this section, we're not physically able to get around Mia. There's kind of like an invisible wall around her. So we just kind of have like our little auto scroll moment here. And during this, it gives us a chance to set up our menus. So here we're going to delete our email, and I'm going to put the cursor on the left side of these bolt cutters. The reason why we're going to do that is that later on, I'm going to have to use some items that are in this spot here. But first, I'm going to have to use these bolt cutters again. So here in a few minutes, we'll get to a place where that's going to be the thing, but we go ahead and get our menuing set up a little bit early. That menuing actually is even going to carry over into the next section of the game, which is about 14 minutes from now. Just having everything ready to go right now. So good menu planning, like I said, is going to be key to making your run go really well. This is the best part of the game. Also, I want to give a shout out to Nick's Issues there. Last night he took, it hasn't been verified yet, but he took my world record from the 100% category in this game. So right here, just a fun little thing that happens. If you stand to the side of Mia, her mouth will not move while she's talking. If we come in front of her, it'll start moving again. But if we come back to the right here, her mouth's going to get stuck in the position that it was in last as we approach the side. It's one of those kind of silly little things that happens in this game. Obviously, right here, you're gonna see that her mouth is moving again, but it's just one of those things in that moment. It feels like they weren't prepared for us to be standing next to her while she was talking. But it's kind of a thing that's common throughout this game. The direction that you're looking as you approach certain things actually changes how you interact with a lot of items. So knowing how your camera needs to be angled is pretty important. Oh hey, welcome to Ross Rossi as well. He is the current world record holder for this category. So here we're going to set up, there's a couple of tones that we're going to hear on a piano in a second. And as long as we're up against this pillar here and we're facing to the right so we can't see the room to the left of us, after 4.2 seconds, we're going to be able to run out of this room. Now, I didn't go ahead and try to jump it a little bit early, which is what that 4.2 seconds is. Because you can lose a lot of time if you go a little early. So we're doing safe strat for a marathon. Now right here at this door, we have to get like halfway through that door frame in order to trigger this next section to start up. And we get to meet our first monster. Now, in this part of the game, normally, if you just start fresh, you'll have tutorial stuff that pops up for you, and it tells you to try to block here. Typically, we don't block, because if you do that, there's some animation where you kind of fight with her a little bit. It's almost the exact same amount of time, but there's not any use in doing it. You'll notice when I stood up, I ran forward a little bit. That's really the only movement that we have to do during this time. And it just makes it to where she starts stabbing us again quicker, because, you know, we're a glutton for pain. Now, when Mia knocks herself out here, because that's about to happen, we're going to have a little trick that we're going to use. As I was mentioning before, there's a lot that has to do with which position your camera is angled at, and then there's also a lot of like proximity triggers. So we have to be in a perfect spot in order to not get dragged into an animation slowly and not be in the proximity trigger for the section. As soon as we gain control of Ethan again, we have 10 seconds until she rises. So we kind of looked at that trim in that very particular place and did 5 little kind of short strafes over so that we could be in the perfect position to not lose any time during her animation that she pops back up. Now this is the Mia 1 boss fight. Ideally we're going to get a 2-hit fight. And that was our 2-hit Mia fight. There is a way to get a 1-hit, and it involves getting a really good clipped hit. So it's not incredibly common to get that. You have to be working for it pretty hard. So right here, we're kind of standing back a little bit because, again, there's a proximity trigger that if you get too close to the phone, it's not going to start ringing. We just had to kind of wait for it. Alright. So after this phone gets put down, we're going to go ahead and pick our axe back up, and we're going to start up our next retry as soon as we get just past this door. Again, as I mentioned before, the retry here is going to cause us to have increased movement speed as soon as we're able to gain control of our character again. There's only 3 of them. 2 of them are right here early in the game. You know, first 15 minutes we use 2 of them. The last one is pretty close to the end of the game. So earlier I was mentioning my menuing, and I mentioned that I had to have my bolt cutters ready, and we're going to use those here. Now you'll notice that the icon to be able to use these bolt cutters popped up before I decided to use it. The reason why I waited and I turned towards it is because if we would have tried to use the bolt cutters at the side, the animation that pulls you in would have added 1 to 2 seconds to your run. Oh man, I missed. Normally, I'm just holding left. I kind of had left and a little up, so I accidentally menued up to my axe, but normally you'll hold left there and it will cause you to instantly menu over to your fuse. So right here, we're going to get our first instance of the Japanese 0D censorship. Normally the thing that we're pinned to the wall with is going through the palm of our hand on every other version of the game, and it's a screwdriver instead of this other tool. And that is our 0D censorship. This one does not save us any time, but the screen does not go black, and normally in every other version of the game you lose your hand there. It's a lot of fun. I love how Ethan takes it too, because he's just like, ow. Alright, let's keep going. Now, as we come up here to the attic, we're going to reach the Mia 2 boss fight. The Mia 2 boss fight is pretty much like the run killer for this for this game. It is the thing that you can mess up the easiest. It is definitely my worst part of the game. So if I mess it up, that's just normal for me. Alright. And we definitely messed it up there. Normally you're trying not to stand up. Considering that that I messed it up, I actually got better than PB time for this area. Telling myself I wasn't going to pull up my time checks, but I kind of forgot there. It's like muscle memory at this point. So that was the Mewtwo boss fight. Normally what you're wanting to do is not stand up during that fight, and the first hit that you get sounds very crunchy because you're trying to get a clipped hit where you get multiple hits all at once. The best that we're able to do on console is to get a 2-hit Mia. I typically get like a 5 or 6 hit Mia because I have a hard time with it. I get a lot of 2 hits never, but I get them in practice actually. I don't think I've ever gotten it on in a run. On PC, because of their variable frame rate, they're able to get the one-shot Mia, which is pretty nuts. It definitely can save you some time. So one of the funny things that we have because of the Japanese censorship is that normally your hand's been cut off, and during this scene the character Zoe is stapling our hand back on. But because we didn't lose our hand, even though the animation's still there, we're not going to have any staples. You normally would see them throughout the entirety of the game. They're just not going to be there. But we still got animation. The whole reason for that is just to make sure we still know that Zoe exists. They don't tell us her name there, but we learn it earlier on. And then when we come out of this load screen, we will have our family. So we're going to spend a lot of time with these guys. Over here we have Marge. Her real name's Marguerite, but we call her Marge, lovingly. Jack is... his official job title is kills speedruns, so just to give you a heads up on him. And then we have Lucas over here. Again, this would be a moment where somebody would lose a body part, but it's not going to happen today. And then one of my things that I enjoy is that over here, this picture that's up on the wall is kind of like a callback to the first time that you see a zombie in the first Resident Evil game. There's a lot of little things that they slipped into the game that kind of harken back to the old games. We'll give Jack a good look here while we're waiting. And then we also have Grandma over here. Forgot to mention Grandma. Now right here we're getting our cheek cut. For the longest time I had no idea exactly what was happening. I kind of thought we were like, I don't know, getting a Joker style mouth cut or something, but ended up finding out later from another runner. They pointed out that Ethan's cheek gets cut there. Now here in just a moment we're going to get out of the chair and we're going to have the Jack hallway, which is semi RNG. It's really based on a very specific way that your camera and movement are positioned. So we have to go to the end of this hallway, pick up this key, and touch a door. And Jack's going to show up at the end of this hallway as we do all of this. If we have bad luck here, he's going to grab us. And we've been grabbed. We took a hit, which that wasn't terrible. It could have been a lot worse. And then we're going to run up here and hopefully get around him before he can touch us again. All in all, that was actually a pretty decent Jack hallway. It could have been worse where he actually would stab us with his shovel, and that animation takes forever. Now, the reason why we had to run and touch that door is it sets up a trick where we can trigger the deputy that's going to show up without having to run all the way back down that hallway here in a few minutes. Yo, thanks, Ross. Now, notice the movement that we have with crawling speed. We're going to pick up an item here in a minute that's going to make crawling speed go a lot quicker. Now, as we come up here, we're going to go and just kind of touch this door so we can get the trigger for this phone. And as you noticed, I moved in from the phone to the phone from the left side. If we didn't do that, we could have possibly picked this map up instead of answering the phone. And I could lose us about a second. Next up, we're going to grab our New Game Plus items out of this box over here. This is what changes between New Game and New Game Plus. So we got all those out very, very quick. And now, right here, because we touched that door, we were able to just run into that kitchen instead of going all the way down the hallway to get the deputy to spawn here. Map percent, I love it. So the items that we picked up, I'll give an explanation of each of them. There's the Albert 01R pistol, which is just kind of an uber pistol. We're going to use it throughout the entire run. We picked up the circular saw, which is also very important to this run. The infinite ammo, which makes everything just go so much easier, and the walking shoes. As I mentioned earlier, the slow movement speed of crawling, the only thing the walking shoes do for us is make us have normal walking movement or normal walking speed during those crawling sections. Now here in a moment, we're going to get into the Jack 1 boss fight pretty much immediately after we leave the deputy here. And that censorship from the 0D version of the game is going to play a role both in the fight and in a later part of the game because of the fact that it gets censored here. And I'll cover that a little bit more when we get to it. The deputy asks a lot of questions I wouldn't ask. Are you the person who owns the place? Even though, you know, normally your hand's cut off and you're bloody and, you know, you have barbed wire and you're kind of looking like you've been tortured. Alright, so right here is the first bit of censorship that's going to affect the game. Normally, after Jack kills the deputy here, he'll start beating on this body. But in the 0D version, he's going to go and grab that shovel from the top of the shelf, and that's going to change his position, which is going to save us about a second to a second and a half. The other bit of censorship is that normally the top of his head would come off during that, and later on in the game that's going to save us some time. So you notice that Jack stumbled there, and we immediately started running. We're going to take that shot as soon as he gets rid of the shelf to force him to get into the car quicker, and we're going to go ahead and set our menu up. And we're going to try this pretty much frame perfect trick here. If I would have shot any earlier or later, we would have hit invincibility frames, and he would have just kind of wrecked into the wall and then not died, so he would have backed up and lost a good amount of time. That's a pretty tricky hit. If you're not lined up in exactly the right position, the hitbox that you'll hit might be different too. You could hit something in the car instead. It's pretty rough. Jack weirdly didn't come at me. Normally he walks towards you and tries to grab you there. That was kind of weird. It doesn't affect anything, but normally that's something that happens there. So one thing that I do that a lot of runners don't is I wait to pick that gun up till right now, and part of that is it makes me pause just long enough to make this animation here trigger maybe a little quicker. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like it happens. And then here we're going to use another trick. We have this thing called the quick turn pickup, and you'll notice that there was an icon on the back of that where I had to unscrew this ox statue from the picture frame. By using the game's quick turn while picking the item up, it made it to where we could instantly start unscrewing that from the back of the picture frame, as opposed to the super slow console analog stick movement, which would have made that take a long time. The quick pickup is something that you use just a lot in this run, so you'll notice me turning and picking items up at the same time a lot. And it's that 180-degree turnaround. The reason why that kind of works out is that normally using that quick turn will cause you to like pause for a moment after you get done using it, but picking up an item also kind of pauses for a moment, because when I pick this up here, you'll notice that like that dog head just appeared on the front of the screen for just a moment, and then it went away. Well, when you're doing that quick pickup, you're kind of doing both of those time loss things at the same time, so you're picking up a little bit of time. And also, like a scene like this, I can instantly get this animation to start triggering. Now here we're going to do the Jack kite trick. What this is going to involve is I'm going to shoot Jack in the leg up here, and it's going to cause him to kind of stumble. And once I come down here, I'm going to start shooting, and this is going to make Jack know that I'm downstairs so that he comes after us. I'm going to go ahead and menu over to my shadow puzzle. I'm going to grab this dog head and we're going to start running again. As we go to leave this area, see Jack just dropped down right now. As we go here, I'm going to start taking a couple shots. I'm going to pause just a second to make sure he's following us, because if he didn't follow us, he was going to bust through that wall there, and it loses you about 8 seconds. That last shot that we took, if we didn't take that shot, there's a very good chance that as we approach this shadow puzzle, he would come out and it would block us from being able to start it up. Oh, I missed it. It's the first time I've missed that shadow puzzle in almost a year. So as I mentioned, you know, that would have saved, or by shooting Jack in that hallway, it saves us a significant chunk of time, because if he comes out into the hallway, if we're not able to use that shadow puzzle, we actually have to wait until we, like, you can't see the air quotes here, but kill Jack. He has to be down once he reaches the main hall there in order for you to be able to use that puzzle. And instead of just taking one shot to take him down with a headshot, it actually can take 3 or 4 shots. Now we're going to the best part of the house. It's in the basement. This is the typical American basement for anybody that doesn't live in America. It has an incinerator room and all kinds of fun stuff. And it has our molded. Now this right here is normally a kind of puzzle that you would do. All the puzzles in this game are the same every time, that they're not random. So anytime that we would have a puzzle, you're going to have the same results every time. Alright. So as we're coming through this area, we're approaching the... Yeah, I know, so normal. Note the sarcasm. As we come through here, we're approaching the Jack 2 boss fight. One of the things that you're going to notice is that every boss fight I mentioned, hey, there's iframes. This one is the most random feeling, even though it's pretty consistent as far as what is and isn't in iframes, but it's really easy to mess things up here. So we have to wait until after he talks to shoot him, and then we got to hit it immediately. That shot is incredibly well timed. And then we start sawing him. That's actually pushing him back into the fence so that he gets there quicker. Now I'm going to go ahead and menu. And then we have one more. I missed it. We had to get one more headshot there. And that's going to give us the end of this fight. Now, this is also another place where we're saving time because of the censorship. Normally when you kill Jack here, the upper half of his body explodes, and his legs go from laying on the ground to they kind of stand up and take a few steps, and then they fall down again. Normally you're not able to get out of the room until that happens, but because of the fact that there's no like body parts allowed to be cut off or anything like that, in this version of the game, he just explodes. Like the explosion happens, but his body stays together, and he just lays on the ground. So we saved 10 seconds in that spot, just because of the CRD censorship. Now, one of the cool things when you run this in VR is that this kind of animation right here, you would just press the button and the animation doesn't actually happen. The door just kind of opens for you. You also notice I was using that quick turn again there. And there's a lot of times like that door there where the most ideal way to hold your controller is using kind of like a claw grab position so that you can keep your thumbs on moving and open doors at the same time. Now here, while we're waiting on the key animation, I'm going to go ahead and menu over to use this dog head. And then I have all 3 of the dog heads to open this door. Now my menu is going to be set up for everything that I need to do in the old house when we get there, which is going to be the next area. So as we come in this door, you'll notice that I was kind of at an angle instead of running straight in. And the reason for that is if you're running straight and then you try to just move, like have Ethan go back, like step backwards, but you go 180 degrees backwards, it will cause the game to pause for a moment. And it's like a half a second pause. So if you come in at an angle and then you come back out at an angle, you don't have that pause happen to you. Also, the reason why we had to go in and out is that the trigger to make this phone start up is leaving the trailer. And this is one of the phones that you have to answer in order to get the story to continue. One of the things about this game is that we have an out of bounds that we found, but it's not usable because the way that this game is programmed, you have to hit all of your items in order or everything soft locks. There's one really good one that we would definitely be using if that wasn't the case, but again, that soft locking pretty much makes it non-starter. Now this next thing that we're going to do is a console specific issue, definitely more so for the PS4 than any other platform. As we get into this room right here, I'm going to pause the game, and right here, this black screen that just popped up is a black loading screen from the game not loading quick enough. Now that, again, that's like a PS4 specific thing, that it's like incredibly common that happens. We missed our quick pickup there. If you noticed, I picked the item up and then I turned around. That's one of those things that is a lot more common on the PlayStation 4 than it is on the Xbox, but it also does happen on the Xbox, and it's even more rare on the PC. So the reason why I got my saw out right before getting to this door is that those bugs, the spiders that were coming out of the door there, if we didn't have the saw ready to go before starting that animation, we would have ended up having to pull the saw out and moving up and down as we sawed to try to get all the bugs off the door. By having the saw ready, we could kill all the bugs as they're coming out of the door there. Here's our second shadow puzzle. These first 2 shadow puzzles that we have are actually very easy to hit, even though I missed the first one. They're actually both very easy to hit because you don't have to be super precise on the area that you put the puzzle in. The third one, you have to be very precise. It's not nearly as forgiving as the first 2 are. So earlier you heard me mention the movement speed that you have while crawling through these crawl spaces. And right here, you're going to notice I'm moving a lot faster than we were as we were trying to get away from Jack earlier. And here we're going to pick up a classic Resident Evil item, the crank. So classic that they even have from like the official Resident Evil emails and stuff, they ask you which crank is from which game. Now, when I go to use the crank, there's many times that you're going to see me try to use it. I'm going to try to line myself up as best as I can with where the animation for using it actually begins. And the reason why we got to do that is, as I mentioned with the bolt cutters at the very beginning of the game, if we're not set up, we can lose a lot of time to getting pulled into animations. In that last room, you'll notice that I just kind of ran right by Marguerite and she didn't say anything or notice me or do anything at all. I've never had a 3 hit there. That was insane. It didn't really like cause any problems, but that's never happened. Anyways, as we entered this room, we kind of beelined it straight for that furnace right there. And by doing that, because we're on easy mode, Marguerite just kind of completely couldn't see us. If you're on Madhouse, she'll find you every time, and you have to do some extra work because she'll send bugs at you. It is possible that she'll see you on easy. It does happen from time to time, but it's not incredibly common. I also had to look so that you could see Marge just kind of enter the screen here. So here's going to be the Marge 1 boss fight. It goes really quick if you do it right. And basically we're going to take a shot with the Albert pistol, and then 3 shots using a quick shot method on the G17. And I did not get my quick shot off very well there. So I missed one of them, and I had to take 3 shots there. Normally, we would use that quick shot, which the quick shot is basically, we found that if you just shoot the G17 pistol like normal, whether it's aimed or it's hip fire, it shoots at a rate of about 1 shot per second. If you alternate between hip fire and aim fire, you shoot at about 2 shots per second. Now you'll notice that I ran up to the top of those stairs and I stared at that lantern puzzle thing for like a second. The reason for that is that that's gonna cause a that was a trigger to keep or to let us get through this next section after we get off the phone. If we didn't stand there and wait for a moment, when we go through this door in just a moment, the bottom of this pit would be filled with a molded material, and we would have to run back up there. I always fear that I missed this trigger because if you look just a little too short, if you're not looking just long enough, it's going to be down here, and then you lose a lot of time running back up. The fact that I'm talking about it makes me feel like it's going to happen to me in a moment, but we'll see in just a moment. We're good. As soon as I heard Marge there, I knew we were good. So Marge is going to grab this lantern, and then we're going to run after her. I'm going to look to the right, and you'll see Marge start to run away. How far she is from you doesn't matter at all. If you fell while looking to the right, she would start moving earlier. If you waited to look to the right until much later, she would wait. It's just one of those things where as soon as you see her, she starts to move. There was a point where I kind of feared that I was going too slow because I noticed in other people's videos that she was running away faster, but that's just the reason why. Now, as we come up to the greenhouse, we're getting into the Marge 2 fight. This fight can... this one's a pain in the butt. There we go. We got the load right. Alright, so we got our quick shot there. Now I'm going to stare at this hole as we move into this room to manipulate her position into this other hole. And then we're going to keep sawing on her. And she's going to jump back. And now we're going to go ahead and saw again. And we got the quick kill on her. This was a combination of a couple of different strats that were being used a long time ago that myself and Ross Rossi, who's the world record holder, developed that strat. On PC, they were just coming over with the circular saw and kind of hitting her in that hole. And the rest of us on console were actually taking her and shooting at her like that in a different area. And we kind of, we worked on it until we were able to get that to work. The thing there is that if you do too much damage to Marguerite before she jumps back, you could accidentally break her little bug sack thing. And if you do that, you'll actually miss the strat because you need that bug sack to exist after she jumps to do additional damage. And when she landed, it's easier to explain this afterwards instead of in the moment. After she landed, I waited until she let out this screaming noise. The reason for that is once she starts that scream, it locks her in that screaming animation, and she can't like know that she has too much damage and jump to the ceiling like she would have, giving us the ability to do an insane amount of damage all at once there. So this section is the upstairs to the old house, and it's mostly just walking on the way through, but it's a nice little break from some of the action that we get there for a moment. One of the things that I mentioned earlier again was those walking shoes. This is the only other time that the walking shoes are going to be really useful during most of this run. And it's just because of that little dip that we have to do to get in through that door. Yeah, those old strats were bad. That dip through the door, it saves 300 milliseconds per time that you go through. So we saved about a half a second by doing that. Now right here is a time where on PC they use another retry, and the reason for it is that that mold that loaded in really late there, if they use a retry when that autosave icon popped up, it will actually cause that molded to load early enough that the first shot won't hit his invincibility frames. As I mentioned earlier, you'll hear invincibility frames a lot, and it's because every single enemy in the game has invincibility frames. The ones that we're able to kill pretty much the moment we see them, it's because they loaded in early enough that we don't have to, that we're not able to do anything to them during those invincibility frames. But every enemy in the game has them. So if you watch a character load in, so we see him like that guy, how he just kind of popped, or a lot of the crawlers where they jump through a wall or something like that, we have to wait a certain amount of time before we're able to shoot them and actually kill them. So right here's another trick that we found. Normally you would have to run inside of this trailer to get this next area to load, but by just touching that corner we found that the trigger, the proximity trigger or area trigger for it, actually extends just slightly outside of the trailer, so we're able to just bump that for a moment. And right there I got a quick flash where you saw a character pop up. It's actually the grandma character that she's loading in, because here in a moment we're going to see her. Obviously here's another place where we commonly get that black screen. But when she loads in, she actually is standing inside of her her wheelchair upstairs. So as we come downstairs, we're going to see her here in just a second. It normally scares the crap out of you when you first walk in here because you turn the corner and there she is, but we kind of know that she's going to be there now, so it doesn't freak me out as much. Now here we're going to try another trick. This is kind of just like a skip on this crawler that's going to come through, and we got it. He immediately despawns as soon as we get through that door, so if you can get around him with that little turn, that saves a lot of time. Now that snake key that I just picked up, when I was at Jack 1 I mentioned that we were going to save some time. You saw me just run into that room, grab the key, and just go. Well, normally on every other version of the game, that actually is a like 11-12 second animation plus a little bit of movement time where you would I don't care, where you would normally have to wait to watch an animation where you pull that key out of the decapitated deputy's esophagus, and it ends up saving us right about 13 seconds total, including movement time and everything, just because again we're on the censored Sarah version of the game. Now up here we're coming into Lucas's bedroom. Lucas is the other baker, the one that would have had his arm cut off at the dinner table earlier in the game. And we're going to go into the attic to do our third and final shadow puzzle. In the 100% category, there's one more incredibly easy shadow puzzle, but this is the last one for any percent. And again, this one's incredibly precise, so if you're off a little bit, it's a lot better to go ahead and make tiny adjustments than to try to accept it and see if you're right. You'll notice also, well, you won't get to see it now, but one of the little fun things that happen is that puzzle is supposed to be called Judgment, but if you actually look at the label underneath of the painting, it says Judgment. They forgot to put the E in. Just one of those little fun fact deals. And then here we're going into Jack and Marguerite's bedroom. Now, since we had to wait on that key animation, I was able to go ahead and get my menu set up for the next item that we're going to use. Actually, the next couple of items that we're going to use. And in here, I got a skip there that saves you about a half a second. As you fall, normally there's a second drop that you have to take. That's another half a second drop. And by turning as we were dropping, it actually moved us forward far enough that we were able to get that skip. So this is another one of those guys that loves to smack me. Right there. I knew it was coming. And we're going to run outside, and we're coming up on the Lucas TV. So as we walk out here, again, I can't shoot this guy yet because of invincibility frames, but right there, I needed to take that shot, because even if it doesn't kill him, that pause that he gets from taking that shot makes it to where we're able to get to this door without being hit by him, and the other one doesn't get around to us fast enough to hit us. It's very rare that they're able to get into the stairs here, because normally they will despawn But here is our Lucas TV. I'm actually on really good pace right now. Like PB pace right now, actually. So here we're going to sit for about 2 minutes while we wait on this video to go through. There is a skip that once upon a time happened here, and it's like a complete glitch, random thing that we have no idea how to make it happen. If we were able to make it happen, it would save us about 2 minutes. We got to see it happen in one speedrunner's video, and one casual player got it as well. Those are the only 2 times we've ever seen it happen. And normally what that would be is that the screen at the end of this long video explodes, kind of like something in Saw. And that's when you stand up and you can continue on to the next area. In those 2 videos, it happened like the second time that he said the name Ethan. So it skipped like a whole 2 minutes worth of video. If we could get that as something we could actually do in the run, it would be amazing. But so far, over the course of the last year and 3 months that the game's been out, no one's been able to find a way to force it to happen. So it doesn't really work out for us too well. If we have any donations, go ahead and read them off. I don't know if we do or not.
We don't have any more at the moment, but thank you to everyone that has donated so far, because we are super close to what I'm calling the extended goal.
In case there's not, because I have no idea. If I can't hear the stream at all, so I don't know if there are donations. So right here the TV is going to explode and we're going to get moving. Now this next section, there's a bunch of trip mines that we're going to have to run through, and we have to shoot them before we get to them. They can be very tricky because you can blow yourself up. This one right here, if we can shoot it as we enter the door here, that was awesome that we actually got it. It sucked a little that I didn't quite get in the door very quickly from it, but that was actually really good pace. That shooting the one inside the door there is very, very difficult. On console right now, only me and one other runner are shooting that one. And as we just kind of took that explosion there, when you run in that door, if you're anywhere but pushed all the way up against the right side of that door frame, you'll actually be completely blown up and knocked down, because both of the trip mines that are in that door frame will get you. The way that we handled it, as we walked in, we kind of moved to the right, so when we got blown up, or when we got backed up because of the blocked explosion, we didn't... Sorry, just wanted to get all my menuing stuff done. We didn't get blasted back into the other trip mine. Now, when I got to that box, you'll notice that I took the saw out first, and then I ended up putting it back in. When we get to this next area, after this here, there was a trip mine there I had to shoot. After we get through this farm or barn area, we're gonna have to go into this little crazy room and do this puzzle. And when you go to enter that room, you're not allowed to be carrying any items at all in your menu, or in your inventory. If you have anything picked up, it won't let you through the door. So we got rid of all of those items, and the ones that I've kept are all of my New Game Plus items. When you go to delete a New Game Plus item, it just sends it back to your box at the bottom of the box. So that's why we kept these items and put all the rest of them away. I also put everything away in a specific order so that I'm able to get the... I missed the first shot there. So that I'm able to get to the crank easy here shortly when we're gonna go ahead and reload here, so that when we go to use the crank later, I know exactly where it's at. Alright, and then here's where we're gonna go ahead and... oh, wrong button. delete all of our items. And then I'm gonna keep my menu cursor up in that top left hand corner so that I can use the candle that we're gonna pick up here shortly. Now, deleting all of those items also was very planned out, because when we pick our items back up, my guns and the saw are going to be in specific places. It's not as important because I can adjust them before the next big fight, but I like to have my stuff pretty well planned out. I don't like to have to do a whole bunch of extra menuing. So after the whole barn area, we're going to go into Lucas's little crazy funhouse of doom. And to do that, we have to put this key code in. And if you notice, the sound effects there are from the original Resident Evil menus. It was just one of those cool little throwback features that they put in the game. Alright. We're going to come over here, and Ethan's been dirty, so we're going to let him take a shower for a minute before we move anymore. And then once Lucas starts talking to us again, we're going to go ahead and get in position. No matter what you're doing during this time, you have to kind of wait, so it gives us a chance to catch our breath. Alright, so now we're going to light this candle, and once the candle is lit, we're going to go burn this rope off of a door. As the rope is burning, I'm going to set my menu up to use this valve that we were going to pick up. And then when I do this puzzle here, I'm going to be quiet because every time I talk during it, I mess it up. So alright, that's actually like an incredibly simple puzzle because every one of those is just moving 5. It's either 5 up or 5 down on any of them. No matter what, it's gonna get you the same place, but every time that I talk while I'm doing it, I screw it up, so, you know, quiet. That animation that we got pulled into on that valve was a little off. It could have been slightly quicker. It's nothing crazy. It may have been like a half a second that we lost to the animation there. But that's also why I ran all the way up to the cake instead of starting like trying to use the candle before getting to it. Now over here, we're going to put this bomb in the wall, but we're going to stare at the wall here and then kind of come back and pick this up and then come at the wall. You'll see on PC and on pretty much every console runner at the moment that they will grab the boards off the wall first and then turn around and grab that. That's a trick that I found relatively recently. It only saves like 300 milliseconds. It's not a huge time save, but you know, every frame counts. Now we're waiting on this door, or this hole to blow up, and then we're going to run through it as fast as possible. If you're not quick there, you're actually going to get a lot of slowdown, and you could lose a few seconds worth of time because of some animations that happen. Alright, now we picked up all of our items that we need, and that menuing for the crank made it to where all I have to do is move down twice, and it's right there. Happy birthday! Yes, this is how far behind my chat is. So out here, most of our movement's going to be tied up against these walls here, and then I'm going to move to the other side, and then I'm going to move back to the right. As we walk through this next area, I'm going to try for the God shot on this Mr. Everywhere, just because there it was too. In 100%, there is a Mr. Everywhere doll that's in that little shack there, and it's like every time that I go for the shot on any percent, I hit him, and every time I try to get that quick shot on him on an actual 100% run, I miss it. That's one of those things that's just very typical. Alright, so as we approach this bridge here, there's going to be a crawler that pops out. We're going to have to just kind of angle, start to run by him, and then shoot him because of those invincibility frames we were talking about earlier. If I tried to shoot any earlier, it wouldn't have done anything at all. We probably would have just ended up getting hit instead, because that's typically what happens to you as you're running through there. Okay, so this is where we're gonna get the cure for Zoe and Mia. We're gonna give her this head and an arm, and she's gonna put it in what looks like a food processor and make a cure with it. Alright, now I'm going to menu that over just because I'm comfortable with my gun being there. And then by putting my cursor here, later on when we have to use an item again, that's just going to be where the item is at. So here we're getting into position so we don't get pulled into the animation to grab this. We're already there. And this is the beginning of the Jack 3 boss fight. I might be a little quiet during part of this because I messed it up a couple times this past week. So if I get real quiet, that's what's going on. I'm just super focused. But we're going to start this off by that big eye that's right in front of us. We're going to try to shoot it, and then we're going to shoot from above one of the ones that's underneath of him through these floorboards. And missed the first shot. And I missed the second. So we're going to go ahead and do this a little bit different. That's going to definitely lose that PV pace that I was talking about that I had earlier. But that's okay. The eye that we were trying to kill is this one underneath. There it is. Alright, and now we're going to get this one on the tail. This one on the tail has invincibility frames. As you noticed, it took me forever to kill it. And now we're going to go ahead and try to pop this one on his face. Now that we got that, we're going to move on and do the rest of this strat like it's supposed to be done. Alright, missed that shot on this one. And this is going to end our fight here. Unfortunately, we missed the actual strat for this. Normally, that one that was underneath of the tail right there, you shoot that while you're above. And it makes it so much easier because the hitbox to try to hit it as you drop, as you noticed, it took me a few shots to try to hit it. And it's kind of unfortunate. But that's the Ethan, or the Jack 3 fight. It's a lot of fun. That was like the one of the big ones I was worried about for today. Alright, so as Jack grabs us here, this is our big lead up to what we're gonna do. Now Zoe just told us to use the serum on him, so we're gonna stab him, and that's gonna cause him to be cured. I'm doing air quotes here. If you've played any of the later DLCs, you'll know what I'm talking about. Now, I'm just going to say, make sure you notice that Jack is not crumbling, and every other enemy that dies you're going to see is going to crumble. That's all I'm saying about it. And after the Jack 3 fight, we're going to come out here and make the big choice for the game. We get to choose whether we're going to save Mia or we're going to save Zoe. Because we had to use, according to Zoe, we had to use our serum on Jack 3. Now, there's really not an option here. There's things we could do, but there's no reason to make the other choice. We're definitely going to choose Mia. For the speedrun purpose, it's because by choosing Zoe, you add an extra short semi-boss fight kind of thing. And that's basically the only difference between making that choice. There's some story things that change a little bit. An all bosses run wouldn't be terrible, except that it's like not even a 30-second thing. It goes by so quickly, it's just like, oh lord. But yeah, as Strizer just said in chat, saving Mia is definitely canon based on the DLC that came out after the game was released. So, story-wise, Mia's the right choice. Speedrunning-wise, Mia's the right choice. And then just, personally, like, if you're Ethan and you just came here to find your wife after 3 years of her missing, like, really, are you going to choose this other person? Especially after they just told you to use what I would think of as their serum to end Jack? I mean, come on. That's a no-brainer to me. But according to ResidentEvil.net, about 1/4 of all people chose Zoe the first time. So maybe they just didn't like getting slapped around by Mia all game. Whew. So this is a nice little calm moment. As I mentioned earlier, there's only one time during the entire game that we're able to skip any like cutscenes, anything like that. And this is definitely not one of them. I would love it if it was, but it is not. I also point out that based off of that time check that I did right after Jack 3 there, I'm only 6 seconds behind my PB time, and I actually lost a lot of time there on Jack 3, so we're not doing too bad here. Now, one of the other things that I mentioned was that if you chose Zoe, nothing was going to change. When we get knocked out of the boat here, whether you choose Mia or Zoe, you're going to wake up as Mia in a moment. And that's just, it doesn't matter what you do. You would start to go down the river with Zoe, and then things happen. I'm not going to explain that. Don't want to spoil for anybody. But things happen, and then you still wake up exactly like this as Mia. So when I say that nothing really changes except for that one like 30 seconds worth of a boss fight, that's pretty much the only thing. So as you noticed in the reflection, and as I said a moment ago, we're waking up as Mia instead of Ethan. We're now gonna look for him and find him pretty quick, and then he's gonna disappear, because why not? Alright, now right there you can kind of see on Ethan's cheek how it's been cut. That's that cut that we got at the very beginning of the game. Yes, this game is great at explaining everything. Now, one thing, when we get to this door, besides trying to get positioned into the right animation frame, like so that we're looking at it the right way, we're also going to stand and open the door all the way before we start to move into it, just because we were able to move through that door really quick. If you run at it immediately before trying to open it, it'll cause the door to open slowly. There's a number of doors where the way that you're looking at it and how far you are from it cause it to open fast or slow, and that one's a little bit easier to manage. The one that's in the basement that you have to use the snake key on, that one is very random on what makes it open quickly. Now, this section of the game is every Resident Evil 7 runner's favorite part of the game. If you cannot detect the sarcasm in my voice, it's there. It's so different from the whole rest of what we've done already, where it's been a lot of action with boss fights and all this and that. The ship section doesn't have a boss fight in it, so it's just the pacing seems very different. And you can kind of tell when the game was in development, this part of the game was done by a different team. They actually had different teams do all the different sections of the game, so you can kind of tell a difference from section to section. And that's the reason, is because they had completely different teams making the different sections of the game. This one had, you can tell with some of the localization in it too, because the translations are not as, we'll say, fluent as the earlier parts of the game too. One of my favorite lines that just happened a moment ago is where the guy says, is there any guns on the ship, or something like that, instead of an R. There are jump scares in this section, and especially if you're playing casually, you'll see a lot more of that. With the speed run, there's really only a couple of the jump scares, but no boss fights during this section. It kind of, some of the less frightening things will actually get you a little bit more, because there's a lot more like ambient moments. So when something does happen, it's like, holy crap. Which is, I think that was kind of the theme they were going for this section, was, you know, we spend a lot of this time without having any guns too, so you're a lot more vulnerable in that regard. So you know, it's a trade-off. All right, so we use that quick pickup again on that fuse, and by getting it really quickly and getting out of there, kept us from getting hit by the molded there. And that molded, again, that's a little jump scare moment for people. I forget about what some of the jump scares are because I've seen it so many times. I've got well over 1,000 hours put into this game, so and it's only been out for, you know, what, 15 months at this point. So I just know where everything's at and I know what to expect. All right, so when we got into that room, I was trying to get to that tape and put it in the VHS player before Evelyn, the little girl Evelyn, started talking. And that's because if we get there like that, it means that we're on really good, or we got in the room very quickly. This tape is actually going to take us to 3 years in the past and kind of show us what happened that caused this big ship that we've, through the story, learned that Mia was on and kind of started this whole mess of the outbreak that's happening here. One of the things that we really get to have fun with is that because we're on console, we have long load screens. The longest one is coming up. So here we're meeting another character of Resident Evil 7, and his name is Alan. Alan is absolutely the worst thing ever of all time. He's just, I do not enjoy him. He's a terrible human being. You're gonna see him yeah. You're gonna see him a couple of times, and in those very limited interactions with him, he quickly became, he got on my nerves so quick, and it was mostly because of English. On the English dub for this, before we found out about the time saved by going to Japanese, the voice actor, he does a very good job at evoking some emotion, and that emotion is hatred for Alan. But Alan does have a shining moment coming up. Now, right here, you'll notice that the watch, the little smartwatch that Mia's wearing, has that timer during the conversations. And when I mentioned earlier that we were able to actually see in the run that we're saving time, that's how we were able to just see that the Japanese saves us that little tiny extra second of time. There's other languages that save time as well. I cannot remember what they are. They all save the same amount of time, so I've just stuck with Japanese instead of going to one that doesn't actually do anything for me. Alright, so here we're picking up some more of our New Game Plus items, and mainly it's just so that we can use this SMG to shoot this guy out of the elevator. As long as he's in the elevator, it's not gonna go up or down, the doors won't close. I always shoot him out. Some of the other runners will kill him while he's inside the elevator. I always force him out with the SMG because you have to wait until his death animation finishes before the doors close, and it's very random as to if you're going to get the quick death animation or a long one, and I don't like to risk that extra RNG, so I just use that SMG and push him out. So right here we're going to get these guns, but when we go back to current day, we're not going to have any. When I mentioned that we weren't going to have any weapons earlier. You're right. Mia has to get her steps in on the Fitbit. Alright, so here we're going to pick up this corrosive material, which is going to be used to open up this door. It's kind of like having a key. And I'm pretty sure I menued correctly. I did. I forgot to menu like twice this week on this, so I was like, wait a minute, is that today? Did I mess up again? Anyways, it just makes having that happen a lot quicker. So as we come around here, we're just going to walk past this beam and then turn directly around. When you saw that watch going crazy, it showed us that we've triggered the next, like the progression of the level. So we were able to just turn around quickly. If you walk all the way around that back section, you're going to lose a lot of time. Alright, so we're going to stand here and wait. I'm not going to get all the way up on the door because, as I mentioned before, sometimes your position and angle of your camera is going to cause doors to open slowly. By waiting until she turns the phone off or cancels the call or whatever, it makes it to where you can get through those doors quicker. If you're too far back when she cancels the call, you'll lose time because of having to walk up to the doors, but being right about to where I was at made it to where we didn't lose any time. So we're going to get a headshot here, and we're going to try for a headshot on the ground there. I'm pretty sure we got it. By getting those two headshots, it let us get through there really quickly. We're going to get that headshot, and yeah, we got both of them earlier. Normally you would see the second one coming around here, so it's a pretty good deal right there. We're going to go ahead and menu so that when we go back to current day, we are ready to use an item. And as we came into the elevator, I was prepared to be able to use the button there. Alright, now I'm going to move slightly to the right when we're opening the elevator doors. It's something, every time we open the elevator doors, I want to be slightly to the right of them so that I don't get pulled into that animation, because as I mentioned earlier, you can lose a lot of time to that. If you're in a bad position on the elevators as you're trying to open them, you could lose up to 3 seconds on those elevator doors. So we don't want to lose a lot of time. I didn't mean 3 seconds on one single elevator door, by the way. I meant all of them. Alright, so this is coming up on the end of the Mia in the past section. But as I mentioned, we're going to have one shining moment from the character Alan. And this is that shining moment. As it's going on, we're going to just have a moment of silence to appreciate what is happening here. But I couldn't say that what's about to happen doesn't happen to any better of a guy. Bye, Alan. Alright, so that was the end of Alan. And now we are seeing Mia be infected by the molded. You're going to kind of see as we get back up that she is covered in this molded material. And this, like I said, this is when she gets infected. So story-wise, this is 3 years prior to the events of the rest of the game. She's infected. And then shortly after this, the family gets infected as well. So that laptop that was on that table back there, if you remember at the beginning of this run, we were seeing a video where Mia was saying she was lying and don't try to find her. You could actually, while moving through this section, go in and record that video. So right here is that one time that I mentioned that we were going to get to skip any cutscenes or anything like that, and it introduces us to the longest cutscene or longest load screen in the game. We get to spend about 2 minutes watching a load screen. If you let that video play through, the in-game timer continues as the movie plays, and it wouldn't cause a difference in the time at the end. as far as the load screen goes, because once that movie ends, the load screen still takes the same amount of time. It's unfortunate, but it's where we're at. This is a great time for donations if we do have any. Not sure if we have any, but
no new donations at the moment, but hope everyone's getting hyped for the next game. And this run has been awesome, by the way.
Now, in case we don't have any donations and I'm not muted, as we get out of this, we're gonna pick back up as Ethan, and the moment that we come out is the oh wait, no, I'm wrong. Why am I so wrong? When we get through this next section, we'll be Ethan. I'm getting ahead of myself all of a sudden. Hi, Evelyn. I had a moment there where I forgot where I was at. So yeah, as I mentioned before, I'm gonna stand to the right of the elevator door so that that animation pull isn't insane. I give my life. Yeah, I don't know. Some MGS up in this game with the ladder. I don't actually know the song, so if I said it wrong, I apologize. And my singing's terrible too, so I'm sorry for every single person that's watching this right now. Now, funny little story about this section of the game. Once, I won't say once actually, twice, long ago, I was in a race with, at the time he was the second place runner and I was the third place. And we got to this section, and you climb that ladder, grab that lug wrench, and then you're supposed to drop down here and use the lug wrench on this hatch. It was super duper late at night, and I was nodding off and accidentally climbed that ladder a second time instead of dropping down into this hatch. That caused me to lose 45 seconds in a race. I lost that race that night by 1 second. I was so angry. I also did it again in a second race directly after it because I was dumb and decided to accept another race right after partially falling asleep in one. But it's a great moment. It's a great moment in speedrunning history. Or at least my speedrunning history. So there we picked up a fuse. And that's going to be menued one to the right of where our corrosive's at right now. That's going to be important when we come back down because we're going to put that fuse into that slot there. But first we're going to come up here and get a cable. Speaking of DQ nuts. I want to go on the record and just remind people I'm not ZFG. Almost every time that I do anything in public, I get a comment of, I love your OT runs. I'm not ZFG. I don't do OT. Alright, so we're gonna come into this room and we have a cable that we're trying to pick up. And the cable's pretty simple, but as we go to leave, there's gonna be a fat molded that's just blocking our way, or trying to block our way there. Oh, I know, there's definitely worse people to be confused for. I don't mind it. Alright, so as we go to run out of this room, there's like 9 times out of 10 that molded's gonna be just stuck exactly where he's at. There is like a 1 in 10 chance that he breaks loose, runs into that room, and just messes you up for a moment. And then there's also a chance that that crawler is stuck in the doorway and you just kind of have to push against him to try to get out. So far we've been pretty lucky with those little RNG things here. Alright, so we're going to use our cable, use our fuse, menu over, and wait to be able to use the button to go downstairs. Alright. Now we're hitting that bottom floor again, and this is going to be the final section that we play through as Mia. There's a couple little things that we can do to make things go quicker for us. They're pretty much RNG though. One is not get hit as we pass this guy, which is great. Two is the RNG on this guy where he jumps back into the right. Didn't happen. It's okay though, because it's not a significant change in time. And then right there, that box, that can cause us to get stuck here in a moment if this fat molded doesn't run out. I gotta wait a moment before I run. Since he decided to just stand there, that was kind of like the bad RNG there. And normally he would, I won't say normally, if you're having good RNG with him, he'll actually just run out towards you, so that, and it makes it to where you can just run around him really quick and not have to wait around for him to move out. That box, if it wasn't there, we'd be able to run right by him, and I know that because on the 100% run, you have a gun when you're running through there, and you can shoot that box before you get to the bridge, so you can just quickly run around. Now, here's another fun little thing that you might not notice when you're playing Resident Evil 7. We're talking to Jack, and he's kind of explaining some things to us, but this light is making some shadows go on. And Jack only casts shadows from the areas that his skin is exposed. If you'll notice, his neck, his upper chest and head, his hands and his wrists will cast shadows behind him, but nothing else. You'll also notice when his hands start moving around that it will cast shadows on his shirt, the chair, and the wall simultaneously. It's just one of those fun little things that the developers kind of messed up on. Zoe, her shadows cast like they're supposed to, but all of this happens over here, and it's just a whole bunch of hilarity. And you really kind of get to see the thing with the multiple areas getting the shadow on it when he's picking his hands up during this part. But I love it. 10 out of 10 Shadow Engine. So if you actually are paying attention to the story and you're paying attention to what Jack's saying here, it's pretty sad stuff. He's actually explaining that basically he knows what's happening, he just can't stop from doing it. That his family, every one of them, know, like, they're able to comprehend that they're doing these evil things, and that they're just kind of, while she's not able to necessarily force them, it's just that they cannot stop themselves from committing all these crazy, terrible acts of violence against people. It's like super sad, but I don't know. It's one of those things that I like. One of the few moments that I really start to get any emotion from the characters in this game. So earlier I mentioned that picking Zoe would force you into a boss fight. If you picked Zoe right here, Mia would be super upset with you because you decided to pick somebody other than your wife to save. And instead of lovingly ripping all of this molded off from around us and trying to save us, she actually is quite upset, and since you didn't cure her, she's 100% infected right now. And then you have this little boss fight where you pick up a crowbar and you have to fight Mia one more time. Fortunately, because of the fact that that loses us time, we go ahead and do, we pick Mia, and we don't have to do that little boss fight. So she's all friends with us and stuff. But as you can see, she's been infected again, so healing her earlier really only just kind of helped her out for a couple hours. I'm assuming it's a couple hours game time, I don't know. But now we're gonna run, and we're gonna go try to find Evelyn. Alright, so this little area here, there's not a lot that you can do to really save a crazy amount of time before you get to the shack. So it's really just, again, some of that movement stuff. If you're not being tight on your movement, if you're not waiting until the last second to crouch there, you're gonna kind of lose some time. And then right after we get up on this stump, if you stay to your left, you're gonna move faster because you'll stay above the water for longer. if you don't stay all the way up against the left, you'll get into the water and go to this slower movement speed for a while. And we're going to take a fish along for the ride. It's always fun to have the fish. Earlier in the game I mentioned that with the Japanese dub, there is time saved. It's, as far as we can tell, it's only 1 second, but you know, every second counts, you know. And if you weren't here at the beginning of the game, you wouldn't know that I am running on the Japanese Zero D version of the game. It's actually very censored. No matter what version, you can change the language over to Japanese and it'll save that 1 second. But the using the Japanese version has about 25 seconds total of time that's just saved because of censored animations. Alright. Everything's in order. Sweet. Now this next section is kind of when you're in the run, you're just ready for this. There's going to be this big ascent up this salt mine here shortly, and it's just what you're waiting for. I was a little up. I always try to have my gun just right in the right place. Usually I'm off just by a small amount. But there's a trip mine that normally blocks you from getting into that door. Now right here we're going to shoot this enemy. And I missed him, of course. But if you try to shoot any earlier than that, you're going to hit his iframes. So he'll end up hitting you like he just did with me. I love what Strizer just said there. That's pretty much what it is. The ascent and the salt mines, there's a lot of shooting and a lot of things that you're trying to get around all at once. Alright. So again, as we came around there, instead of letting myself be pulled into a long animation by trying to hit the icon from the side, I turned all the way around behind there so that I can get that animation quick. And as we come around this corner, we got another little mine to shoot. And we're entering into the labs in the salt mines. So in the story, you're going to find out that Lucas is actually working with a secret organization, and that's part of why things are going on the way they are. You get most of that story in the Not a Hero DLC that came out later. But right here, we're making the neurotoxin that's going to let us destroy Evelyn. And when we get through this area right here, I'll definitely pay attention to the speed that Ethan is moving at. More so as soon as we get out of the water here. Just pay attention to how quick he's moving, because we're going to use that last retry that I was talking about at the beginning of the run. And you'll notice we're not moving super duper quick. But here we're going to go ahead and hit retry. I wish the swearing text would do that. Once we come back out of this retry, as I mentioned earlier in the run, the game's going to forget that we're supposed to move slow. But as opposed to earlier when we got set to the maximum indoor movement speed, we're actually going to get set to the maximum outdoor movement speed here, which is a lot quicker. And this is the one that you can really tell how much faster your movement speed is by doing a retry. This is like the one section where it's actually speed running as opposed to speed walking. I don't need to hit him again. Alright. Yeah, I pulled out the wrong thing. It's not a big deal because it actually didn't stop us at all. Normally we would take and get the Albert out and take one extra shot on that molded and it would let us run straight through him, but we kind of got through there okay. So right there I pulled this grenade launcher out with the neuro rounds, and the reason for that is it's going to stun lock those two fat moldeds so that we're able to climb to the top of this. If I missed that shot somehow, we would have got knocked off right as we got to the top of it, and then you could lose anywhere from 30 seconds to a couple of minutes depending on if they're both in position to be stun locked or if you have to kill them. You got to be very specific on getting that shot. So here we're approaching the end of the game, and these black and white moments that we're hitting are being caused as a result of Ethan getting infected. So when he was in that molded hive thing that he was trapped in earlier, that was him becoming infected. And one of the side effects that happens is that Evelyn is able to force hallucinations on you. So we're getting to kind of relive things that happened at the beginning of the game, as you're noticing. It's all kinds of fun when you're hallucinating. The difference is that we're actually getting to see Evelyn while this is happening this time around. And you can kind of tell, like, you kind of figure that she was in that area doing, you know, what she's doing right now, kind of taunting Mia earlier in the game, and that's why she was messing you up. So we're going to come over here, and it's our last big interaction with Evelyn before we find her. Now, Ethan does a classic hero mistake, and he basically shows her, hey, we got the thing that's gonna kill you. If I were him, I'd have just kept that crap in my pocket and gone to try to give her a big hug, pretending like I was, you know, on her plan and been done with it. Now, I dipped over to the left there so that Mia would get out of our way as she tried to hit us with that chainsaw. She could just kind of block you from getting through that section really quick. Now, this right here is actually, we've got this trick, it's really movement based, where I'm going in at an angle, and normally you would have the chance to get blasted backwards a couple of times in that room. A long time ago we had a strat called the bomb strat, where you would put a bomb down as you entered there, and then blow yourself up as she sent the second blast out, so that you could blow yourself through the blast to grab her. I hated that because I was terrible at it and would always blow myself up backwards and lose anywhere from 8 to 20 seconds because sometimes she'll just blast you 2 or 3 times. And I was just bad at it. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what to do and found that all you had to do was just move a little bit differently. And by moving at an angle and not like going directly into the force she was pushing out, you could just get that one cycle every single time. So right here, we're going to have the hardest boss fight you will ever see in any game, ever. Guaranteed. Hands down. So, as we kind of come back to and we realize Ethan's legs are not working so very well, I don't have to shoot here, but it's so much more fun to just shoot at things, so I'm gonna do it anyways. None of that does any extra damage to her for real. I don't have to have the saw out and using it right now, but I do need to have it out so I can use it quickly here shortly. When we get picked up here, the one thing that we really have to make sure we're doing is as soon as we get control, we have to cut ourselves free, which we did very, very quickly there. That let us get dropped. If we weren't quick with that, she would slap us around 2 extra times with her tentacles, and then we would get a chance to cut ourselves free again. So here we're picking up the regular Albert pistol. And when we start shooting here, I don't move my camera at all. I don't do any movement with my stick, the analog sticks at all, and that gets us the 4-shot on the final boss for the win. If you move around a whole bunch, you could end up missing that and being eaten by her, but we're not. Time's gonna come up here in just a moment when the screen goes black, so we're almost there. And time. We're going to check our in-game time here in just a second, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the run, that is how Resident Evil 7 is timed. So we're going to look at it real quick, and just I don't really know where we're going to end up. We could be close to PB or even PB there. That wasn't bad. It's 11 seconds behind my PB. That is still a third place time for this run. So I appreciate everybody coming and checking it out. Thank you very much, Strizer, for... Oh, the world record is 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 2 seconds. On speedrun.com, it says 1:30:05, but it's 1:30:02. But thank you, Strizer, for allowing me to run in your Game Over Cancer event. The runs so far have all been amazing, and I want to say good luck to everyone who has runs left today. See y'all later.